these two players. Finally, the time came, and it is time to follow the World Championship match, which we were waiting for since February. And since Karjakin won the candidates, we were all waiting that when it's gonna happen, when it will be. So it is indeed great that tomorrow starts the championship, and we will have exciting weeks till 30th November. Today in my show, I'm not going to challenge myself on Chess24 with Tactics Trainer as I usually do, but I'm going to challenge you and make you to solve the tactics attacking games I prepared for you. And of course, these tactical games and attacking games are from none other than Magnus Carlsen and Sergei Karjakin. Before we start, I'd like to talk about the upcoming match, talk about the players. I don't have I'm not on the side of Magnus or Sergei, but I think that I'm just looking forward for exciting games, the most interesting games. It's been the match which we were all waiting for because, as you know, Sergei, he became Grandmaster at the age of 12 years and 7 months, and nobody could break his record so far, which means that he is the world's youngest Grandmaster, also nowadays. And of course, Magnus is the Magnus. He is the world champion and the great Magnus, which Miss Strategy and Miss Tactics did a trilogy on him, and I really recommend you to watch the series. It is first series. In first series we cover his young career when he was the series is called Young Magnus, and he is indeed incredibly strong player in many ways, just universal player, in tactical, in positional, in all ways. He is just super strong. The second volume is very, very special because Magnus himself helped us to do the series, and he recommended us some of his favorite games. And also it is very special because there you can find the game of Karjakin versus Magnus in Vaikonsei 2010. I'm not going to tell all secrets. You should just go on Chess24 and watch this series. And of course, the third one is about Magnus being the world champion. There are covered the games of candidates where he won the candidates tournament and became the candidate to challenge the world champion, and 2 world championship matches between Vishy Anand and Magnus Carlsen. So you definitely should watch this series if you want to know a lot more about Magnus. As for Sergei and the encounter between Magnus and Sergei, they played 21 classical games. So far Magnus is leading 4-1 and they made 16 draws. I've been in Bilbao where they met the last time. There they made 1 draw and Magnus won 1 game, and everybody was waiting for this game because it was the pre-World Championship match game. But it was a lot of factors there. As Sergei said, that he didn't want to show his opening preparation for the World Championship match. Of course, he was very sad, but it did not mean anything, so we cannot predict anything for the World Championship match, which is starting tomorrow. There are a lot of articles about the upcoming match. On Chess24 you can find the preview where Chess24 did a great job. They wrote Magnus as white and Karjakin as white. And you should definitely read the articles, and there you can vote which moves will be used in the match. So, I'm talking a lot, and it's better to start the challenge. I'm gonna use my iPad to read your comments, because I'm going to challenge you, and as I don't have two desktops right now at home, I'm going to use the iPad to read your comments. So please forgive me if I'm looking down and reading your commands. And on the board we will have some games and positions I prepared for you. I hope you're all ready to accept the challenge, and I'm waiting for the solutions in the comments, of course. So I read one question already. So Pico, will you be taking questions and queries also? Yes, of course. Any questions you have, please do ask me. I'll be very happy to answer. Okay, so I'm going to start with some of Carlsen's games, which I think was very instructive and impressive. So what I'm going to do is I have to go to my analysis and get to the board. Till I'm doing that, you can feel free to solve the position. Okay, so here we are. This is the first position I wanted to show you, and this is the game between Magnus Carlsen and Fabiano Caruana. This is a playoff. It's not a classical game, but the idea here is very, very instructive. It is white to move, and I would like you to look at the position and write the solution in the comments. Please think about the position and try to understand what kind of tactics there might be. It is very normal hedgehog structure, but of course every structure has its drawbacks. Pay attention to defended pieces. I'm giving you a lot of hints, so all I will be asking for is that you should write in comments, what do you think? What do you think white should play at this moment? I hope you're going to like the position, to solve it and write the correct solution in the comments. And first comment, Kramnik student. Oh, that's a great name. E5, bishop g2, ef. That's correct, e5, bishop g2, ef, but of course the solution doesn't end here. So when you calculate the line, it's not only e5, bishop g2, ef, because you're not winning the piece. If the bishop was on e7, let's say, then I will show you, then of course after ef there would be double attack on e7 bishop and the bishop on g2. But since the bishop is not on e7, I would like to see what is the continuation. Let's say if I'm going e5, which is correct, bishop g2, e takes f6, and let's say I go bishop b7 back. I'm interested what you guys would play here. So Chin79 wrote fg. Kramnik student wrote bishop b7, f takes g7, bishop g7, and knight f5. And the correct, which Moby wrote, is knight e6. That's correct. That's correct. Knight e6 here. And it's disaster for black. If black takes fe, then after queen e6, bishop e7, because there is no other move, f takes, queen e7 and queen d6, white has just 2 extra pawns and completely winning position. After knight e6, if black goes, let's say, queen f6, then knight c7 wins on the spot, because after king d8, knight a8 and bishop a8, white has an extra exchange. White is an exchange up, and black really doesn't have any compensation for that. So what was played in the game after ef is bishop h3 to defend, to defend the e6 pawn. Now I'd like to ask you, what would you play here? Bishop h3, everything is defended, there is no knight e6 anymore, so what is your idea? What can white do here? Just take the pawn on g7? Would that be Magnus' idea, do you think? Let's see. And there is already an answer, queen h5. Applause for Killer05, who said queen h5, and that's indeed a very, very good move. There are solutions like g4, but after queen h5, which was already written in the comments, it's completely lost for black. So what is the idea? Queen h5 traps the bishop, because bishop cannot go anywhere. I mean, if it goes on f5, then after knight f5, ef and rook e1, black can simply resign. After queen h5, queen f6 was played, but queen h3, bishop e7, knight c3, white just has extra piece, queen g6, knight c6. It was a blitz game, so Fabiano played a couple more moves, knight e7, king e7, and after bishop f4 he resigned. I think this was very nice little instructive tactics, because after e5, this is very famous idea, but the bishop is on e7, so white usually goes e5, bishop g2, ef, and then there is double attack, as I mentioned it before. But here it's awesome, because after bishop g2, ef, and bishop h3, there is this very strong queen move, queen to h5, and it's very lost for black. I hope you liked it. I will change the position now, so I'm gonna show you another game of Magnus Carlsen. We started with a little bit easier one, but Magnus of course has amazing games, and now we will look at the game between Magnus Carlsen, Yakovenko Dmitry, who was playing with white pieces, and Magnus Carlsen. So here is the position, and there we go. It is black to move. It's very complicated position. Look at this bishop on d5. Isn't this simply amazing? And it is true that white's king is very weak, but how can black continue to attack? Do you have any ideas? There was a question. Sorry, Sopico. Queen e6, bishop e7, fg is not good. That's also possible that fg wins. I guess it wins. I'm talking about previous position right now. But anyway, that position is completely lost. Okay. So here, queen a4, it is black to move. So now queen a4, please. It's black to move. Okay, So I'm waiting for solution. And let's see who will be the first one to spot the incredible idea. Okay, so rook d5 is one of the suggestions. Another one is queen h4, and Thales Matthias solved it. There is already the correct solution, and it is bishop c4, which is really amazing. Killer05 said rook d5 and queen f4 and then rook d6. Everything here seems very tempting. The position is very complicated, and once you look at it, you're like, oh my god, I should lift the rook, or I should do something, because the queen is super strong on dark squares, the king is super weak on the king side, and if I only get my rook on h-file, then it's gonna be fantastic. But of course this can be done, and there is no problem with it, but it's not winning on spot. So rook d5 is an option, but I'm not even sure that it's winning, though what was said in the comments of bishop c4 is an amazing idea. It wins the pawn, gives the bishop, but then we take it back. So let's see it on the board. Bishop c4. Bishop c4, so obviously bishop c4, rook d2 is disaster for white. Bishop f7 he can try, and of course we're not going to take it here, because then white is able to defend this pawn with various moves like king g3 or rook f1, so we're not going to do that. So after bishop f7, we go either king f8 or king h8, and after, let's say, queen e6, queen f4, king h1, and rook f2, white cannot defend the mate on h2, so it's time to resign. As we see, bishop c4 is not possible. Also, let's say queen c2 doesn't make any sense, because then we will simply take on d5, and look at this. It's horrible. Rook d2 is the threat. If you take on g4, let's say, then rook d2 might win, or first queen d6 to defend c5 pawn, and after, let's say, king g2, then rook d2, or we can also move queen to e5, and this is going to be a real disaster for white. But after, we can also, just a second, I just thought that maybe here we can also play queen f4 check, bishop d5, e d5, and queen f4 check also looks great. And after here we can just take it here. It's just disaster. Okay, so queen c2 is not big deal also. So after queen c4, queen f4, and the idea was already spotted by Killer05. Well done. King h1, our rook g3, and rook d5. This is the idea, that white cannot take on d5, because then we win the queen. So after rook d5, he decided to take on d5, because there is nothing else white can do. Rook d2 is the threat, rook h5 is the threat. Any move, it's just completely lost for white. After queen d5, rook d5, e d5, it is that white has two rooks for the queen, but the position is really bad. The king is very weak, so after c4, which is very important. It is passed pawn and the rooks are pinned, they are not active, and it is impossible to defend this position. Rook d1 was played, and after c3, d6, c2, white is not in time to play d7. Rook d3, but queen c4, and after rook e3, queen c4 is actually very nice move, because if if black wins, then you might think what I should play on d7, because then d8 is with the check. So with queen c4, d7 is not possible. After queen d3, black just wins and stops the promotion of the pawn. So after rook d3, queen c4, very precise. Rook e3, queen c6, rook d3, queen c5. This is a super awesome technique to win this endgame. After queen c5, if you go rook e3, then of course black takes on d6. And otherwise c1 is the threat, and you cannot really play d7 because of queen f2, king h1, and of course mate with pawn promotion. I really like this game, and I really think that it's very instructive, because it's not easy to spot this bishop c4, especially the idea that bishop c4, queen takes c4, queen f4, rook g3, and there is rook d5. So I read that it's very hard to follow. If I'm talking too fast or too much, please forgive me. I won't do that anymore. But I think the ideas are very clear here. Bishop c4 was not possible because of rook d2, and after queen c4, a nice little tactic with queen f4, rook g3, and rook d5. Okay, let's change the position. Let's challenge you with another game, and let's see which one I'm going to put it right now. We've seen the game between Carlsen and Fabiano Caruana with Yakovenko, and now it's time to see the game between Carlsen and Ivanchuk. This is an awesome endgame, which I really like very much. Here is the position. It is white to move. And take a look at the position. How can white proceed? I'll be reading your commands so that I don't miss anything. Rugaf is saying that the position and the tactics elements in the position are over my level. There is nothing very difficult in these positions. I hope that I explain the tactical motives well, but if I don't, please ask me what are you interested in so that I can explain it to you, or I can show it on board. Please do ask me the questions you are doubting about. Okay, so Killer05 once again. He is very sharp today. Knight c3 and knight d4. Simba 7 and Kramnik student also agrees that it's knight d4. And Sheen79 said knight c3, a7. Okay, knight c3, I'm not going to take, of course, on c3. This is very nice that all of you spotted the idea that black cannot take the knight on b4. But let's say I'm interested what happens if I go back. So after knight c3, let's put it on the board so I make it easier for you. We already know that knight c3 is not possible because of a7, and you cannot stop the pawn promotion. And after knight c3, if king b4, which is bad, knight b5, king b5 is not possible because of a7 once again, and a very poor position of this knight on e7. But after knight b5, black can play knight c8, a7, and knight b6. But here, after knight c7, a8 is the threat, also knight d5 is the threat, so it is very much winning for white. Okay, knight c3 and knight c7. What my audience will say about this position? How should white continue? Okay, once again, Killer05, you're a true killer. Okay, knight d5. But I'd like you to write the whole variation you're looking at. What happens after knight d5, knight d5, knight d5, a7, knight c7? I can come back. So, is it winning? Raghuv is asking which knight. Actually, in this position, it doesn't matter with which knight you start to take on d5, because black anyway has to take on d5. So after knight d5, I'm not going to put it on the board, because I want you to train the visual memory of your this is a very good skill to imagine the position, not put it on board and solve it like that. Okay, so we play e4. So Killer05 is saying that e4 is strong in this position after knight c7. But Magnus didn't play it like that. Probably Magnus would not agree with you, because he played something else. What did he try to play? If you play e4, you simplify the position, and the king is not very far from a5. I mean, from a7 pawn, sorry. So if I grab that pawn, then I sacrifice the knight in f pawn, and my king is in time to get the king on h6, which is going to happen. Then it's going to be a draw. Simba7 is asking knight d5, knight d5, knight d5, and knight a8. Black is not going to put knight on a8. He is going to put the knight on c7, then grab the pawn on a7 with the king and have the knight in the center. So after knight c7, king d4 is the correct move. And this is also already said in the comments, so well done, guys. And let's put it on the board now. Okay, so knight c3, knight c7, knight d5, knight e5, take, a7, knight c7, and king d4. King b6, which black was planning to do on e4 after taking it as well. King e5, king a7, king f5, knight d5, and king g6. And now, after knight e3, king h6. And white has two pawns, and black is not in time to do something with these two passers, because after king g5, h6, h7 is the main problem for black. Not that white is going to move f5 first, but after king anywhere actually on g5 or g7, g6. Sorry, I like g5 because then we cut the e3 knight as well. So after, let's say, king b6, which was not played in the game, Ivanchuk here already resigned. But after king b6, king g5, and this is a huge problem for black. He cannot really stop the h-pawn to be promoted. Alright, I hope you liked this endgame. It is very special endgame because there are two knights and white only had this passed pawn on a6, and of course it's a huge plus when you're pawn up in the endgame, but knights endgames are really tricky, so this is indeed an instructive one. Knight c7 and knight d5 here. It needs a precise calculation that after knight d5, a7 and knight c7, king comes to d4, grabs both pawns on f5 and h6, gives the e3 pawn, but then black is not able to stop the h-pawn to be promoted. Okay, now let's see another game by Carlsen. And this is going to be the last game by Carlsen. Then we will see some games of Sergei Karjakin. So this is the game, very famous game. I was following it online, and it was indeed super awesome game. Magnus Carlsen is playing with white pieces and Luke McShane is playing with black pieces. It was London Classic tournament, and when I was following it, I was also watching the commentary, and they were completely excited that Magnus played such brilliant game. So I'd like to ask you now, what do you think about this position? It is white to move, and how would Magnus Carlsen play here? Okay, so let's wait for your decision. Look at the position, pay attention to the power of the pieces, pay attention to the black's pieces as well, find weak spot in black's camp, and then write the solution. What would you play here? Raghav asks me to flip the board. That's completely correct, so I'm very sorry that I didn't do it. So it's flipped. Anadrko24 says knight e5. Once again, Killer05 is killing us today. Simba7 also agrees that bishop e6 is the right move. Bishop b6, sorry. Edward Cantilano says that after knight e5, d e5, queen e5, bishop f6, bishop h4 wins. This is completely correct, but what would you play after king g8? That's also a big problem. Bishop d4 might be there, so Killer says bishop b6, queen a3. Queen a3 is, after rook c5, there might not be threats. Of course you can take with the bishop, but there is knight f7 or bishop e7 to protect this d6 pawn. So let's try to look at this one. This is not the correct move. Bishop b6 is the correct move, but first of all I'd like to ask what happens on knight e5, f5, and queen e5. Bishop f6, bishop h4 was advised. If king g8, I thought that bishop d4 might be a problem for black pieces. King f7, then queen g7 is there. Otherwise, the mate on h8 is unavoidable, I think. Bishop f6 I would just take. So I guess, oh, sorry, so I guess bishop f6 is the move. Bishop h4, and I was thinking about knight g8. At the moment I don't have the computer, so I cannot completely for 100% say that this is very good for black, but for me it seems that black is doing fine. Rook f7 can be played. It is still a piece, so I think that this is not very good for white. I think that's pretty bad for white. Queen f6. Sorry. Let's see how. Queen f6 or not. Queen f6 where? Yeah, bishop f6. Okay. Where would you take the queen? Simba is asking why not just take the queen. Instead of bishop f6. How can I take the queen? You mean in this position? I think bishop f6 is... Oh, indeed, after bishop h4. Yeah, also true. Actually, this is completely winning for black. Sorry, I missed that. That's why I have you guys to spot the tactics and tell me, hey, what are you doing? Okay, so bishop b6. We already know that knight e5 is not the solution. After bishop b6, what about rook b6? Queen e7 was played, but if rook b6, that's pretty bad, because after queen f2, there are several threats. Queen b6 and queen f8, which is the very dangerous threat, just the mate. Let's say bishop b5 is a main move. Okay, as I said, rook b5 doesn't work because of queen f8, and after bishop b5, knight b6, bishop d3, knight c8, bishop b1, and once again here I want you to find the precise win, because black here has two bishops, two pieces for the rook. If, let's say, you take rook b1, queen c8, then what? I don't see what happens. So there is only one precise move here which wins the game. Which one is that? Simba7 is saying knight d6, but this is not correct, and Kramnik student found the correct move, which is queen h7 check. So the idea of queen h7, first of all, knight d6, queen d6, you can take on b1, but still black has two pieces and dark squares is very weak, so after queen a7, black is completely winning. White is completely winning. The idea of giving check here first is that black cannot go knight f7 because I'm just gonna take it, or with the rook. So if, let's say, I took here on bishop b1, I took rook b1, queen c8, and then gave check, then after knight f7, I would not have the idea I have on queen a7. King g8 and rook b1, and it turns out that black cannot take on c8 now because of rook b8 completely winning for white. Okay, so bishop b6, queen e7, Queen f2 was played in the game, rook cb8, rook b3. I'm not going to comment much about these moves. I am just going to have another critical moment in the position he took here. Bishop e2, rook b3, queen f6, and king g8. So how would Magnus Carlsen proceed this amazing game? What do you think? Killer05 is saying bishop g4, but this is not the correct solution. Simba also agrees that it's bishop g4. But I wonder what would you play after the move which was made in the game. I'll try to make a move, bishop g4, but then bishop g7, bishop e6, and king h8 would not solve white's goal, which is to win the game, and probably black is doing completely fine here. So bishop g4 is not the solution, though it's very tempting. And here many guys said knight c5, which is the very correct solution, and knight c5 is an amazing move. Very difficult to find. When I was following the game and I saw knight c5, I was actually watching on chess bomb as well, and computer said knight c5, and I was like, what is this move, knight c5? Because my first thought was also like, okay, what's going to happen on bishop g4 or queen e6 or something like that? And when I saw knight c5, I saw knight c5 and Magnus right away made the move, and I was like, oh wow, that's indeed very beautiful move, very brilliant game, and indeed very nice win for Magnus. So the idea of knight c5 is clear. After d5, d6 and bishop c4 comes with mating attack. If queen c5, then it's simply mate with queen e6, king g7, queen e7, bishop f7, and take just mate. And after rook g3, which was played in the game, knight comes to e6, and look at this piece. Just 2 moves ago it was standing on a4 and now on e6. And after knight e6, black is really forced to play queen f7, because any other move, let's say queen b6 or something else, leads to a beautiful mate on f8. So queen f7 should be played, queen f7, bishop f7, this was the game, and rook b1. Once again, black has terrible problems on the back rank. If you look at the position, you might say, oh, come on, this is equal material and black has 2 bishops, what is the problem? But actually, this position is really very lost, because black's pieces are not coordinated, and black has huge problems on the king side, and the king is very weak. So after bishop e8, which is the only move, look at this bishop as well. It has no moves. It can either take on e7, e6 after de. This would be a queen very soon. And after bishop e8, bishop f3, now this rook is trapped. And you might think that, okay, I was playing for the mate, so I thought that I would play, I don't know, rook b8, king f7, and then I would play something like knight d8 or whatever. But you shouldn't forget this rook on g3 is very, very trapped. So after bishop f3, the next move is king h2. King f7, rook b7 check first, king f6, take. Magnus is very calm, saying that, okay, I'm not in a hurry, because, okay, king h2, bishop f4, black is not completely losing this rook, but after this one, black simply has no moves. Rook h7, bishop f4, take, take, and now e5. And look at this rook. It doesn't matter actually, you win the rook on g3 or not, because it's anyway out of the game. After e5, d5, d6. Okay, I have to mention that king e5 was not possible because of rook e7, king f6, and rook e8. But after d5, d6, this pawn cannot be stopped. Bishop e4, rook e3, and bishop d5, king f5, king h2, rook e5, and once again back to f3, king f6, and d7. Black resigned. It was an amazing game, and everybody who was following it, they were all very impressed and very pleased to watch it online and live. Okay, now it's time to show Sergei's talent. How good is he in attacking games and tactics and calculating and proving that it's not going to be an easy match for Magnus, and he will do everything to get the World Championship title, because that's what he was dreaming for since he was a kid. Okay, let's go and see Sergei's first very beautiful game, which I chose, and I think that it's a very nice one. And this is the game when he was a kid. It was in 2002. Karjakin was playing with white pieces versus Malinin, and here we have the position. It is white to move. If you look at the position, it's kind of normal position. What can happen here? But take a look. There might be some hidden ideas. What would Sergei Karjakin play here with white pieces? I'm waiting for the solution. Pay attention to the pieces. Pay attention to the queen on a4. Is it doing something else? This might be a bit confusing, so I'm not going to be evil and tell you that, ooh, maybe I'm not going to mislead you in wrong direction. Killer05 said bishop h6. Pay attention, there might be something much more beautiful and much more, just much stronger. Any ideas from any of you? Kramnik student said knight g7. And Crusher 1995 said the exact solution, because when you just write knight g7, I of course have the question, what are you going to play on king g7? So he wrote the right one, which is knight g7, king g7, and bishop h6. Applause! Very, very well done. So this is very beautiful tactical motive, which I would say that is not that easy to find. it is true that all pieces are ready for the attack, but it's not easy just because when you sacrifice something, you either know that, oh, it's gonna be back very soon, you either mate or something, but for a temporary compensation, it's very difficult to sacrifice. Of course, it's not a temporary compensation, but it's crushing black for sure. So after knight g7, king g7, and bishop h6, white is completely winning because king h6 should be played. Let's say if king g8, then queen d2 and queen g5 is a huge threat, so black cannot do anything about it. And after king h6, simple check, king h5. Okay, here, this is a huge blunder. Queen g5, king h8, just take, give a check, go to h6. Now I want to give a mate on h7, and after f5 there is a mate on f8. That's why king h5, g4, knight g4 takes king g4 and king h1, d6. Finally black does something to develop, but it's very, very late. After rook f6, rook h6 is a huge threat of mate. Queen g5 doesn't help because of bishop e2, bishop g4. If king h4, then this one would win the queen, or queen e1 also. So it's gonna be a disaster. Bishop g4, and after bishop g4, black resigned because queen g4 is mate here, and king g4 is losing the queen with the coming mate. Okay, so you guys are discussing bishop h6 here, and gh queen d2, which is of course very, very interesting as well. Knight e5 here is the suggestion. Knight e5, second knight e5. But after seeing knight g7, I think bishop h6 loses its beauty. Probably it's not even right, because I can even go knight e8. As ugly as it looks, it might be not so bad, and it's not winning on spot. So I guess knight g7 is a very beautiful motif, where after king g7, bishop h6, you sacrifice another bishop, and just like this, winning the game. Okay, now it's time to challenge you with another Sergei's game. And there we go. Now I'd like to introduce the game between Sergei Karjakin and Levon Aronian. This is a very interesting game, which might not be that easy, but I liked the idea so much that I was like, I'm gonna show this one. It's not winning on spot or something. It does get a serious advantage, but the ideas here is so impressive, and it impressed me so much that I wanted to share it with you guys. It is white to move. Sergei was playing with white pieces, and what would you play? Simba talks about the previous position, which was knight e8. Instead of knight e8, I could maybe take and play queen d2 and d5. This is also correct because then f5 knight is hanging. But anyway, we have new position right now. The rook is hanging, it's true. So what would you play with white? It might be super difficult, and it's not like a huge tactic, but it is a counterattack. It is very nice developing move. So I gave you a bit of hint. Once again, Killer05 and Kramnik student, and also Dr. Terminator, Dr. Terminator, I would say Dr. Terminator, said bishop g5, and this is the correct move. I liked it very much. We have to mention that d takes c6 is not possible because of back rank problems, and here after bishop g5 it is counter-attacking move, knight e5, then bishop d8, and white is enjoying an extra pawn. And the point is that after hg, d takes c6, there is no mate anymore. White still has an extra pawn, but it is doubled on c-file. White has an advantage, but not that he is winning on spot. Though the game continued with f6, rook c5, and bishop e6. And this is the second moment in the game where I would like to ask you, what would you play here with white? Once again, it's not winning on spot. It might be a draw, but it's super awesome practical chance to play those moves, and I hope you're gonna guess it. Skogli, knight b6, that's correct. Knight b6 is the move, and rook a b8 was played in the game. We have to show that after cb6, a b6, it's very lost for black, because after rook e8, which is kind of the only move, now the threat is, let's say, king f7, the threat is c7, rook e8, and b7. And after rook e8, here b7, rook a b8, simple f3, black is in Zugzwang, he cannot do anything. Zugzwang is bad thing to use here, but black is completely busted. King f7, rook a6, it's very much winning for white. After knight b6, which is very pretty move, c takes b6 doesn't work, rook a b8 was played, knight d7, bishop d7, take and rook d7, rook c6. The idea is to grab the pawn on a6, and here it is seen that how great chance was to play these impressive moves like bishop g5 and knight b6, because Iranian here had a move which is completely logical to play. It is rook d2, giving up the c2 pawn but getting on the second rank. And if, let's say, rook a6, then of course rook c2, and if rook c7, then I guess rook e8 and rook e2 would be very nice for black. But black played here rook b5, rook a6, rook d2, check, king f7, and g4, not to have any problems on back rank and to control the f5 square again. There is a question, what if after knight b6 black plays rook b8? We are just looking at this right now. So after rook c5, a6, rook cc2, rook c8, c6, a7, rook f2, and rook h8. Last very precise move, and Aronian here resigned because he cannot stop the pawn promotion. I think this was very nice ideas just to play these two impressive moves, bishop g5 and knight b6. I was very impressed, so I hope you liked it as well. And now let's get to another game of Sergei, which is the game between Ivanchuk and Karjakin. Very nice idea here, not easy to spot. So it is black's move. I'll flip the board, and there we go. What would Sergei play here? Very nice idea, very good practical decision. Not even practical, it's just good for black. So what would you play here? Once again, Keeler said bishop h3, which is correct move, but queen h4, I do not think that is the move he meant. Maybe he mistyped. Simba said knight h4, and Sirtabai asks, could not black go for the perpetual check in the final position using the rook on second rank? Not really, because after rook h8 the h2 pawn was defended, so after rook g2 he would go king h1. But back to this game, after there are suggestions like knight h4 directly, but Simba7 guessed it right. It is bishop h3 and queen f6. Bishop h3 is the move and is the very nice tactic that Sergei saw and played. After g takes h3, there is queen f6. It's not very easy to spot because usually when you take on h3, the queen is already on on f6, and then you take on f3. So then it's easy. But this one, bishop h3 and g takes h3, queen f6. After king g2, you might stop calculating here, and you might think that, okay, it doesn't work, so what else I can do? But please do not stop the calculation if you think it's critical position. Calculate one move more, and you might find here that after knight h4, black is very much winning, because after knight h4, and queen f2, king h1, and queen g3, there is a huge threat of queen h3 mate, which means that white is forced to play rook e2, and after queen h4, black gets back his two pieces which he sacrificed, and has two extra pawns and winning position. So that's why in the game bishop h3, c4 was played, but after knight df4, c5, knight g2, it doesn't matter, the bishop is hanging on b6 or not, because after cb6, queen f6, once again we are threatening to take the knight on f3 and knight h2. Just take on e1 and ab. It is very winning for black, and the king is so weak that knight h4, knight f3 is the ideas for black. The game continued like bishop c3, bishop e6, and rook e3, knight f4, but soon soon Ivanchuk resigned, and it was very nice game by Sergei. Especially this bishop h3 g takes h3 and queen f6 with king g2, knight h4 idea. And we are going to see the last puzzle, which is one of the most famous game of this year. I was there attending the candidates tournament. It was the last game of candidates tournament, and it was completely amazing to be there, feel these emotions, look at the supporters, and it was amazing. This is the game between Sergei Karjakin and Fabiano Caruana. The situation, if you remember, was very tense because Fabiano only needed a draw to win the candidates tournament and win the chance to play against Magnus Carlsen in World Championship match, and Sergei was in all-in position because he needed to beat Fabiano, and he did so. Actually, I think I mix up. I'm very sorry. You know, women's memory is not that good. I think Sergei was the one who was leading, and he only needed a draw. And that was amazing that he beat Caruana, not even playing this perpetual moves which he had a chance before. And I was attending this tournament, and we were standing in front of a big screen, and everybody was like having mobiles in front of them, checking what was computer saying, and computer said here the move, which my audience also saw very easily, rook d5. And first reaction of the audience was like, what is this move? Like, what would you play on rook d5? Everybody was like, rook d5? Would Sergei see that? Because it was time travel and it's not that easy move to see. And everybody was like, the supporters of Sergei, it was in Russia, Moscow, so you can imagine how many supporters he would have there, and everybody looking at the screen, checking what computer says on the mobile, checking, looking, and when Sergei played the move rook d5, everybody was like, oh wow, he definitely saw the winning idea, and it's going to be Russia versus Norway next World Championship match, which is Sergei Karjakin and Magnus Carlsen. So after rook d5, this is an awesome move, which is e d5 and queen d5. And turns out that black's pieces are in, like, black has extra rook, but his king is so weak that it's a mate. Now, the idea, of course, let's say rook e1 is queen d7 mate. So if it was white's move, white would play queen d7. But after queen d5, let's say rook d8, you want to defend the d7 square, then queen f7 mate. The best chance for Fabiano was to play rook d4. And after queen d4, play this endgame, which is pawn down, but it is anyway very bad, anyway lost, and here Fabi doesn't have any chance to win this game, and he only needed to win the game to win the candidates tournament, and Sergei could make a draw any moment here, so that's why he didn't play and he didn't go for this. He played queen c7 and let Sergei to demonstrate what was his idea and if his sacrifice was correct. So after queen c7, queen f5, now the idea is to play queen h7, And after rook f7, which was played in the game, you could say that rook h8 he could play, but after queen g6, queen f7 is the idea, queen g7 is the idea. It's completely lost. Let's say rook e6, then queen g7, and white is winning the queen. And after queen f5, rook f7, bishop f7, queen e5, king f7 loses to queen h7, queen e5, rook d7, king f8, and rook d8. Fabiano resigned here, and in the lobby you could hear a very, very strong applause for Sergei Karjakin. So this was the games that I prepared for you. This was my preview of the World Championship match, preview about the players. Both players are amazingly strong, and I think it will be the most exciting World Championship match that I am going to follow. I hope that you would also follow it. Of course, on Chess24 we have World Chess Championship special schedule. You could follow the live commentary, and I'm really looking forward for tomorrow and for the start of the championship. You should not miss the Miss Strategist show. It's gonna start very, very soon, and she will also talk about the upcoming match and talk about the players. I'm not going to tell you what she will show, so you should definitely be there in 15 minutes and attend the show. I hope that you liked the games I showed you. I'm gonna be back with Banter Blitz on the 13th of November, so it's not going to be next Thursday, but it's going to be soon, very soon, in just 3 days. I'm going to be back, of course. Before that, we are having 2 games of the World Championship match. We're going to talk about that games as well, and of course then it would be time to warm up and play some blitz against me. I wish you very, very nice evening, and make sure that you're going to be there in 15 minutes and watch Miss Strategist show. I'm going to wish her good luck and send her my very best regards. See you soon. Bye bye.